of birth or of rank have been abolished. All citizens, whether native or adopted, are placed upon terms of precise equality. All are entitled to equal rights and equal protection, and no union exists between church and state, and perfect freedom of opinion is guaranteed to all sects and creeds. These are some of the blessings secured to our happy land by our federal union. To perpetuate them is our sacred duty to preserve it. End of quote. Do you think your ancestors were given equal treatment? It is said that a country or a state is only good as the people who are empowered to speak on behalf of its citizens. By the year 1848, when the Treaty of Guadalupe was signed, the American government, as well as the state of Texas, was riddled with bigots and liars. They all looked the other way when everything was being stolen from our ancestors, their rights as American citizens. By keeping their silence, all these federal, state, and local officials were publicly condoning atrocities and showing failure to address criminality, including the ideals and laws that these men were sworn to protect. Not only were government officials partaking in this injustice, but also corrupt judges and shyster lawyers, as well as some men considered to be the honorable sons of Texas and other states, and the community leaders of those states, were all encouraged by lawlessness not only to steal, but beat, maim, and murder and evict all of the Mexicanos, Tejanos, and Spaniards from their lands. They all knew there would be no reprisal from federal, state, or local government officials. These evil men were given a nod and a conspiratorial wink to do as they wanted, and to this very day, some of their names are spoken in reverence in Texas because of their wealth that they amassed, with never a whisper of any wrongdoing tarnishing their names. Texas and all of America knew what was being done to our ancestors, just as New Mexico. They knew that our ancestors were paying the ultimate price for their land. They were paying with their humiliation, with their blood, and even worse, with their shattered dreams of their children never being able to inherit their ranches, lands, or mineral rights. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was just a means to an end for the Anglos. Neither America nor the state of Texas or New Mexico ever intended to honor this treaty. I am sure even before the ink was dry on this document, plans were already in place on how to take the land away from our ancestors and make it look legal. And that's exactly what happened. Two countries, one lie. This is why we named our organization Two Countries, One Lie. So that it will be a constant reminder to all of us that our ancestors were denied their constitutional rights as they promised in this treaty. We are fortunate to live in these times. We have advantages that our poor ancestors never had. And we have convenience of instant information. We are able to tell you of the atrocities committed by our government in the name of progress. When all of our ancestors' lands were stolen over a 160-year period, Texas, New Mexico, and other states, including the U.S. government, they helped by taking the humanity out of the operation. These crimes and shames were committed even though constitutional laws and rights were already in place. Every American knows their rights and is proud of the Constitution. We rely and expect on the protection it provides. The problem was in the case of Mexican landowners that constitutional rights were totally selective and that constitutes blatant discrimination to whatever group or person who was deemed to be unworthy of any type of legal protection. And yet, having all this electronic information at our fingertips, how is it that we are all acquainted with the history of the Alamo, Custer's Last Stand, Civil War, just to name a few, and other historical events? But knowledge of our history of injustices towards Mexican descendants and land grant owners is next to nothing. That can only imply that our ancestors were not only forsaken and forgotten, but they must have been somehow also invisible. I spoke of this yesterday. we no longer can be invisible. How convenient for these men who were in power then that such a maligned and mistreated group of citizens remained highly invisible. Amigos, we can no longer afford to be invisible. We have voices, we have words, and we stand together. We have the power. Let our voices serve us well in reminding the world these injustices and bring to light our invisible ancestors. A wise man once said, if what I have is who I am, and what I have is taken from me, then who am I? We need to tell the world who these people were. They lost their land, but they were still human beings abandoned by the country, which promised them but intentionally denied them of their constitutional rights. The promise they made to our ancestors was a premeditated lie. They were just empty words. Again, I proclaim that you today, we find our voices in our wings. We let today be our coming of age. Let the world know we are not piñatas anymore. Let all of Texas, New Mexico, and all of the rest of these states, and everyone in America, know we seek justice for our ancestors who lost their lands while America watched without regard or compassion. Your children will not learn about their heritage in school from school books. It is up to all of us to let them know about these ancestors. We need to make sure that the document of our genealogy, before more time passes and more history is lost, genealogy is vitally important. Please do the best you can. Go home and find out where you came from. Because it's all about your kids in the future to know where they came from in the past. Let your children know who they should be proud of who they are and where they came from. We must assure our ancestors' footprints in Texas, New Mexico, and other states is accurate. It is time for the truth to be told. Con la gracia de Dios, ya es tiempo. To all of you who are descendants, do not allow this quest to die. Inform your children of their heritage. What a special gift you will be giving them to know that these exceptionally honest and noble people were their ancestors. I want to thank all of you again for coming today. We are two countries, one line, and are honored that you took time off from your busy schedules to be here with us today. We would like to a commitment from each and every one of you to follow up your genealogy and help your children know their connections to all of their families. It is important. Get involved and be a frequent visitor to our website to find out about future meetings and our future Facebook page outreach to other families and let them know who you are. You may find relatives you didn't even know about. I want to thank my sisters who wrote this speech, Carmen Madrigal and Anna Marie Fisher. I want to thank Arnulfo Sierra, the manager of Two Countries, One Life, Elmer Sierra, the communication manager of Two Countries, One Life, my son Bo, and all of the rest of the families and volunteers that have helped us. We look forward to working with all of you. Even though we're in a different state, we can still keep in touch. Please, drop us a note. Let us know who you are. Get on our Facebook page. Click onto the links page and you'll see where the Facebook is. Tell us how you felt about this meeting. Tell us what you want us to do in the future. We need to know. We need to be led by you because it's all about you. It's not about me or this organization. It's about all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great job. Another round of applause. We're really thankful that we are able to unify several states here today and have this wonderful, wonderful discussion. The little difference in New Mexico, a lot of folks know that they're heirs. I think once you get to a paradigm of knowing that you're an heir, what do? What are the next steps after you realize that you have a family or families or a community that has had injustices? What are your next steps to do? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the archives of how I got involved about 9-10 years ago because of the Town of Petrisco grant. We had Dr. Joseph Sanchez talk yesterday, He wrote a book, mentioned my name in it, because of when I first started in the movement, to protect the rights and privileges and not have any impairment occur with the town of Frisco Grant. So my perspective is all through the eyes of the town of Frisco Grant. But you have to understand the town of Frisco Grant and myself and the Board of Trustees, we have Jesse Ansudas here, one of our other board members. You met Teresa Gonzalez earlier, professor at UNM, and then Jaime Chavez, who's been a long time land grant advocate. And our folks have helped start the land grant forum, start all of the entities and leadership organizations that currently exist within the New Mexico territories, or the Kingdom of Spain, as we were once known here. So one of the main things I want to have conceptually for people to pick up on is, if there's nothing I haven't learned about this whole journey that I've had, it's always a journey, right? Not the destination or where you start. It's jurisdiction, control, governance, and ownership. And I mentioned earlier in the conference where that if you're fortunate to have all of those, you're lucky. So what is jurisdiction? Jurisdiction is a land patents that we have that gives you a right to say within a boundary of a bounded area, you have jurisdiction. What is control? Control. So control is another paradigm. Control is, let's use the Acequia Association. We have our next speaker is David from the Acequia Association. I know he works with them and does a lot of work from the Santa Fe Law and Poverty or something. He worked at as a lawyer. And so when you look at control, in New Mexico, land grants are federal entities. We've created Acequia associations at a political subdivision level in the state of New Mexico, and now they've allowed in 2004 to create federal state land grants entities. And some people feel that those entities are the land grants. Well, isn't it kind of strange that the land grant started in the 1600s, and then all of a sudden the state of New Mexico in 2004 says, oh, you're now a state political subdivision, now you're something. Well, it's kind of weird, because when we operate from a position of control and power, the Acequia associations only existed through the power of the land patent, and those rights flowed from the land patent. So in the town of Atrisco, what we did, one of the first things we did was worked with the Acequia associations to let them know that they're more powerful with us, because at the state level we work side by side, but at the federal level we hold a patent that holds their rights. Pretty powerful statement there, right? We are the federal entity, we hold the federal document. The people, the landowners, are the ones that control that. The lands are what created allowed the water to flow, or allowed the control of that water, so control. So then you have governance. Governance is something I think we're remiss in as a community. The governance means, do we take control and ownership of our communities? Do we, at the end of the day, lead by example? Do we tell the county that this is our property, and we'll take the monies that's collected within this area, that they call it payment in lieu of taxes, and we say, this is our community. Don't take our money from our people. We want to govern our own people. We want to take the money, and we want to have self-determination, self-governance. You could call it self-government. Ownership. Ownership is, as an attorney, maybe we'll have a question for David later, property rights in a land grant are owned by the community, not by an individual person. You have the right to be there. A water right is another one. It's another tragedy that I see in the state of New Mexico. The state of New Mexico decided that at some point in time they're going to try and manage the water rights situation in New Mexico and govern it. I don't know all the laws behind the water rights. We hired a guy named David Esparza to do some research for us and help us to quantify what we own. I would say that the land grants and community own the water. The state in New Mexico has decided to apportion it and has created a right system. They call it water rights. I say it's a right to water, not a water right. I would have renamed it differently, so that the land grant gives you the right to water your community, not a water right. So the concept of water right now is being that it's monetized. Anytime you try and monetize something for individual use, you're in conflict with the community. Anytime you do that. And in my opinion, the rights for the community outweigh the rights of the individual. People may disagree with me in there, but our nation was founded on the rights of our people. And when Dr. Sanchez was talking earlier, he asked, who's sovereign? Who's sovereign here? Anyone? I know I am. Do you need to tell somebody you're sovereign? Or do you need to act like you're sovereign? And what's the power of sovereign? What sovereign power is when you raise your hand with me and we have a common community. Mr. Maestas worked for the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau calls it a community of interest. We call it a land grab. The census even bounds areas and say, here's a community of interest. It could be a different boundary line. I can tell you that the land patent boundary line cannot be changed. A land patent boundary, when you have a land patent, we're talking about community land grants here, not individual private land grants, community land grants where someone said, this is for the benefit of the community. So then now, our next speaker, David, when he talks about a trust relationship, what's a trust relationship? That means that the trust protects the integrity of the purpose of the trust. Do you think we have a trust in a land grant with a community of interest that has hundreds of folks that have to work together to share water, grazing area, timber? Atrisco doesn't have very many trees. If you look at the town of Atrisco area, bounded area, which goes from the middle of the Rio Grande to the middle of the Rio Puerco, which is over by Route 66. Our south boundaries are by Pajarito Mesa, or the Solera Pueblo, and our north boundaries is by St. Pius. So what I want to do here is, we're going to pull up some documents here. I can't see what the title on this one is, from this angle here. Can somebody tell me what that says? So what happens here, here's a document, and what I want to do is, the purpose of my talk here is to say, we have information, we have an information archive. I'm not going to go into detail on all these, we won't have time. What I want to show is the research. We had the anger that I see from the Texas folks right now 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So 30 years ago we were angry, and as a result of that, things have happened. Are they perfect? I would say, hell no. Are they getting better? I would say a little at a time. And it's only through the effort of people like ourselves and leaders that stand forward and unify that it's going to get better. So here's a document that talks about ownership and control. Can we go to the next document? And I want to just plant the seed that there's information out there. And when we create an organization, you have to, in order to get to this archive, you're going to have to pay as a charter entity to get to it. Because the last thing we want to do is have other entities looking at our archives for our organization. We want to have people that are in our chapter looking at it. Go to the next document. Okay, what does this one say? Here's the Supreme Court. They talk here about a case that says a land patent is tied to the Article 6, and it talks about the importance of people, and they basically ruled against some case. So let's go to another one, the next document. Here is what does this one say? So here's a great document put together, and it's an old document. It's a great document. We'll kind of flip through some of the content here. Great records in New Mexico. The New Mexico archives are a great wealth of information. So let's go to the next document. So here's the town of Atrisco land patent. This is actually the patent that we filed with the county clerk. We refiled it in 2004. So what does it kind of say? I can't really read it from here, but at some point it says that the town of Atrisco has some boundaries, right? And who signed this? Signed by President Theodore Roosevelt, May 5th, 1905, as I recall. So we have a federal boundary, a federal patent, and I actually have some old documents that show the actual patent. Let's go to the next slide, or next document. Let's go to the next one. That's just a metadata. So here's creating a community you want. This comes from a municipal code. This has to do with governance. There's a structure in place that somebody developed on how to organize your community and promote things within a community. So there's another document that says what do you do when you go out and you organize and they give you something, what do you do with the people? How are you going to organize, how are you going to structure? You have to think about that early on in your process. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so here's an e-commerce framework that I shared with myself, and I shared it for a group of land granteers, telling them the power of entrepreneurship. How do we empower not the urban communities? In Albuquerque, we have people making decent jobs. Still, minimum wage is not great, but at least in Albuquerque, we do have a higher employment rate than we have, say, in Tierra Maria. And so, what this idea was to help them share an entrepreneurial spirit, and how do you avoid the get-rich-quick schemes. So we could kind of scroll through some of these slides. But the intent of this document was to show that there's current methods, and we have people in the leadership, people in the consejo, people that will help people to grow their business in the rural communities. And so the idea that came out of this was to create a marketplace for all of the rural communities to buy from each other and help promote economic development within New Mexico. The people, when I talk about computer stuff 5, 6 years ago, when I put this slide together, looked at me like 5 heads, right? They don't understand computers, they don't have internet. It's gotten better. So these slides are still germane, but we have to have, there's frameworks in place. If you want to do something in your communities, I'd be glad to share this information. Let's go to the next document. A business plan, fundamentals. Here's a document on how to form a chapter that I talked about for yourself. So if you wanted to form a chapter, here's the structure to do it. We did this 4 years ago. We got in the middle of a dogfight because the 55,000 acres that was in the control of the shareholders, which are not all heirs, for Atrisco, got taken over by the British. And so we got in the middle of a dogfight. So a lot of this stuff we have time to continue to develop. But this is a membership level that talks about very reference material that you can look at, you can change, you can agree on, not do. So this is a structure for a fee structure that we put in place that we would develop and work with our community and communities in other states, because we do have a California group that wanted to do something. We also have an Arizona group, and actually even a group in Florida, but they haven't contacted us in a while. So I think this conference, working with ourselves, working together, we have some good documents working together. Let's go to the next document. So here's another Supreme Court. This is recent. This is just the 2014, where the Supreme Court again ruled that the land patent, and under Article 6, the Treaty of Guadalupe is supreme. Another example, we just don't have the money to go to court typically. So let's go to the next slide, the next document. This is an agreement. This is an agreement that you would sign a do not disclose agreement within the land grants for the formulation of the information we develop as a land grant community in general, so that we have to agree on what we're doing before we disclose. Well, people don't think about that, but I would not want someone in the audience here representing me, and I think somebody brought that up, unless we agree on it. So we don't disclose until we get agreement. So next document. So this is a actual letter that I wrote to the Bernalillo County, the county that we are in conflict with. This one we may want to go into a little bit more detail. We might want to pull the document in full view. Can you do that for me? And we could go through some of the bullet points here. And I may go down to the bottom here, if you don't mind. I don't know if you want to move I know you wanted to get this on film. So if we can go to the full view, I'll go down on the floor and I'll talk.
I'll do my best to speak loud. So my name is obviously Jerome Padilla, Town of Atrisco. So I'm writing a letter to the county, utilizing the archives that I have. I have to write a letter to an elected official, to a county government, which is county government's pretty powerful. Counties were in place before the state, right? They had counties and territories were there in place before that. So I'll let people read here. Foundation of our nation is land ownership, the settlers. When the United States decided to fulfill its requirement under the treaty, they used the land patent is assigned by the president. You saw the patent I showed earlier. So here's a land patent case that you can refer to, that I refer to in this document. This is an example of Congress granting land grants or patents to fictitious entities is a railroad grant made to compensate the railroads for building railroads. So the railroads apply for a lot of land grants. the United States, most people think they own the land, but unless they have land patents on the land, they do not own it. Most people today obtain real estate contracts, and then they fulfill their contract to stay on the land. A warranty deed is merely a color of title. Here's a description of that, according to Black's Law. So let's talk about a warranty deed. A warranty deed system came in place after the Treaty of Guadalupe, right? They changed the laws for banking in like 1933, 32, sometimes in the 30th century, and they started to encumber because land could not be encumbered. You couldn't pledge land for stuff. So here's some verbiage I used in my letter to them. Land patent is a permanent and cannot be changed by the government after its issuance. Where the United States, this is a direct lawsuit, where the United States has acquired by title, by land, legally issued and upon surveys made by itself and approved by the property department, the sole grantor cannot be impaired by any subsequent survey made by the government of its own purposes. That's a pretty powerful statement, isn't it? Did you have a land patent? So here's another case here, the Summa Corporation. I don't want to go through details, read everything. I just want to plant the seed that there's a lot of information out there. So warranty deeds and quick claim deeds are even a more precarious document. That's actually a fraudulent document that attorneys have put together to allow two people to sell something without even having ownership. And you know what a quick claim deed says? You only transfer what you own. If you don't own squat, you become a squatter, right? Right? But they have a document that says that they can take to a judge and they can take to a law enforcement or maybe a peacemaker, as we talked earlier. Now we call them law enforcement. I wish we would call them peacemakers. We have a better outcome for most of our situations with law enforcement. So here's a rightful owner to take possession. Let's go up here. Local courts may not have any knowledge of land patents. That just talks about ignorance. Ignorance is not stupidity. Stupidity is once they know about it. The Supreme Court acted in a certain way when people are presented from a position of power with a land patent. Land patent has never lost in court, never, that I'm aware of. I've not found anything. So we're talking about the land grant here. And so the problem with land grants is ignorance. It's not stupidity. Most people that are not here don't know that this is going on. Our job is to not make them ignorant anymore. They're not dumb. We're not dumb. I'm not dumb. You're not dumb. But if we don't know what's going on, we are ignorant to the facts. So where did the land within the United States come from? Obviously, you have to realize that, obviously it came from the different entities. There's a whole history of this. So the land office is another thing that came out. So the United States, when they did the Enabling Act with New Mexico, we included in section, it's either section 5 or Article 2 or Article 2, section 5, it's 2 and 5 of the Constitution that they're going to guarantee the rights of the treaty. Inviolate. How many know what the word inviolate means? How many writers in here think that that's a beautiful word because it couples two things: do not change and forever. Notice they didn't put forever. They didn't put do not change. They put inviolate. It's a beautiful word. If you don't know that word, that's probably the most beautiful word in the whole treaty. Let's see. Let's go down to the next slide. This is that same Summa case in California. This is how a land patent works. I don't want to go into much detail about it, but there's several things on the internet. You can look up how a land patent works. Go on the BLM site. There's a process to apply for one. This is not, we didn't apply for one. We were promised one. There's a difference between the Homestead Act and the subsequent land patents that were land patents that were given after the treaty. A land patent promised under the treaty is different than a land patent that maybe somebody has in Texas, in New Mexico. So there's an individual land grant for a person and then a community land grant. I go to a left here, keep going up. Land cannot be taken for, there's a land taken for debt taxes. But real estate can. So when the county sheriff shows up, they foreclose on the property, not the land. You very seldom see the land in any documents. It's a warranty deed. So what happens when they come and take property? You find somebody encroaching on your property. What happens when somebody shows up and says, my name is Mr. Bradby, and I own the property, and Mr. Padilla is on it right now, and I have a legal title to it, because I have a land brother, and he can't prove evidence. What happens is the owners and title insurance of that property, if it was purchased after the 30s and encumbered by bank, what will happen is the owner's insurance will pay him to leave because of his equity and his interest in the property. His property right, not his land right. And then what happens if he bought the property for $100,000 and it's now worth $500,000? Well, then they're smart enough to sell you two types of insurance: owner's insurance and title insurance. So now the other person's title insurance takes up the difference. So this is all about money. The title insurance companies come up and they're crafty and they sell you two insurance policies when you do it. And so what happens is they pay Mr. Bradney to leave, or me to leave. I'm sorry, he's the owner of the property. I'm the squatter. I'm sorry, I had the wrong paradigm there. But if you look at that, what happens? The land reverts back to who? The rightful owner who holds title. How many people hold title within a land grant and a land pact? Only one. If it's an individual land grant, one person holds it, they can do whatever the heck they want with it. If it's a community trust cannot sell assets in any egregious manner without the trust agreeing to it. So I would argue that the water ownership and the water rights in our community can only be managed. They cannot be owned by anybody. The right can be owned, like you maybe own a liquor license, or you can maybe own some intangible document that the government creates. But a tangible item like land, the dirt that we stand on is tangible, belongs to the people. And so I challenge our attorneys, I challenge everybody I need to think differently, to think from a higher perspective, from a more global perspective, and to protect the rights from a strong position, not from a weak position. So the question I came up with after the fact was here: does Bernalillo County have sole authority to approve projects within the boundaries of the town of Tusco Grand Land Pact? WAL is Western Outfree Land Holdings, are a British company that has not submitted any plans to our board, and such has not approved or disapproved any plans. So that's what I wrote to them. So this is a real example of a real dogfight going on that I'm in the middle of. And I welcome attorneys, I welcome educators, I welcome people to join us, because the fight for any loss of any land grant anywhere, water, land, mineral, is a loss for everyone. Because every time they eat at you, they eat at us. We need to make sure that we stand tall and we work together. Let's go to the next document. This was a good example of the all of the research we had done in being able to present yourself at a commission meeting and not be thrown out as being insane. This is a little document. So this is the supremacy clause. This was Article 6 what I brought up. That's a really strong. Talk about land was a huge issue with our forefathers, right? So land, and so Black's Law Dictionary defines land as being intangible. And look it up yourself. It just talks about it being spatial, or control. So I talked about the Constitution of Magna Carta, due process, all that we've gone through that. So let's move up to the other thing germane here. We talked about. I wanted to bring up that supremacy clause, natural justice. There's a bunch of stuff with eminent domain, all the stuff that you talked about. We control the eminent domain, not the government. When they give you a land patent, you control your own boundaries. So let's go to the next document. Right. I want to get through all of our. I want to show the wealth of archives that we have because everybody can benefit from it. But I think we only do that as a chapter. We can only do it as an entity that has content. So can you go to the next document? Or is that the last document?
Close it. Close it.
And I have all this on not online, I have it in the archive for the grant.
Close that.
Here's just a membership document. We'll close out real quick. This is just going to show you that we did this some time ago. Talks about why we're organizing, and it can all be changed. I mean, we did this 3-4 years ago, and we were angry 15-20 years ago. This is what's evolved from our work. Go to the next one. Next document. Skip the mission. We read the mission yesterday. This is a land grant from Associated Land Rights Council. Yeah, that one right there. Just for that. LGA land grant council. So here's the power of, somebody brought up something. So we did this, I don't know the date of these documents, probably 4 years ago. So within the town of Ojibwa, we have 120,000 heirs. The other 33 land grants in New Mexico and Vecinos, we have about we forecast about 165,000. That's about 285,000 heirs in the state of New Mexico. Now that's a guesstimate. That's just a real technical term for, I don't know what the real number is. And then, so if you look at a $15 dues and a chapter fee of say $250, the revenues from that could be like $4 million. It's a lot of money. And then if you looked at the revenues from the chapter, you're starting talking revenue fundraising. If you look at this thing, you could put together a good business plan, a good structure to organize. One of the main things I want to look at is that if we were to get a mutual fund company, if we got 300,000 people together, we could create an insurance company and then just cover their houses within our lands. That's, how much money is that? It's a lot of zeros. What if we create a mutual fund? I know $10,000 in a mutual fund nowadays is not a lot of money. So let's say that people that are working today each put $10,000 in a fund called the Land Grant Association Fund. And you were to fund that. That's $2.8 billion. You can't tell me we can't create a bank to loan people to build on our property? You're telling me we can't do a newspaper? We can't create a mercado to sell? So you look at the bottom of this, this is that LG wild acre cut all over. We've already thought about this development structure for it, but we're in the middle of a dogfight with that land that they have under control for 55,000 acres. So this had to stop. If this hadn't stopped, we would probably have an Etsy-like organization right now. Who knows what Etsy is? Etsy is a Amazon equivalent, except they only sell handmade products. They try and get to the local artists and promote that. They recently went on the open market for an IPO, which is a stock exchange, and they went for $1 billion. Powerful. The Navajo Nation recently bought property outside of the Navajo Nation boundaries and bought 30 acres over here in south of Albuquerque and built a data warehouse for data housing, for data storage. So the IT folks in here that are running the video here, there's a cloud-based data center there that's humongous. They want to control server information, data, and that's the Navajo Nation. They've organized to put money together for that with their own money. And the hell with everybody else, we want to do what the hell we want. This is something that can make that happen. This is just New Mexico. These are low forecasts. I'm a worst case scenario. The town of Ojibwa, that number could be bigger. And the 33 land grants, this is only assuming that only 5,000 heirs from each land grant organize and want information. This may be a bold idea. Maybe it's a pie in the sky. But unless we try it, we'll never know. Next document. So how do you get there? This is how you get there. You have to do this. You have to plan. Without planning, you will end up wherever you end up. It's called organic thinking. You end up. So how many people would get in a car and just drive and wherever you end up at? Not many people. Some people do for sanity, but you don't typically leave. If you do leave your county, then we need to send somebody after you. But typically, everybody goes for a drive once in a while, right? But you got to drive around the neighborhood, maybe go get coffee. You don't know where you're going. But how many people drive intercontinental across without a plan? So I don't want to get into details, but maybe you can scroll down a couple of slides. But plan. I know people say plan by paralysis, right? But without planning, not good. Let's go to the next document. Yeah, let's do this. Next document.
We gotta make some room for this guy.
This is close. We don't want to go there. We saw this represent this, right? You know, your vote really doesn't matter.
Just go ahead and stack up.
It does actually, but we need to change the paradigm, getting more people to vote. Right now, it doesn't matter too much. And I'm talking about legislative vote, not presidential vote. I'm talking about at the legislative level when you're trying to get a bill. Is there another document after that? Yeah. Okay, so that is those documents. So let's don't open up those. We know what strategic planning is. Let's go back. So it says now that you have a strategic plan, you got to actually do something. That's that. Let's open up the team law sovereignty one. This is a team law is a law firm that represents sovereign folks. I would just take a look at it. They have some good ideas on sovereignty. close that, go to the next one. I just want to refer to this site. This is a planning overview we did with a Trisco scan. We organized 100 leaders in the Trisco, and we presented them with a plan on how we thought. We can maybe scroll quickly through some of the slides. This is our plan that we presented to our leadership earlier in the year, and so we mobilized action, objectives, how do we start. Some of them didn't know anything about the grant. Talks about some numbers we have in our grant. Talks about if you look at, we have the Leyes de las Indias, we have the plan de critique. We talked about those earlier. Not a lot of people do that. Leyes de, we have this Leyes de Burgos. That's another important thing. Leyes de new laws, and then a little discussion on it, and then community-wide strategic plan process for community land grants and public planning. How do you organize your community? Visions, focus, purpose, trying to come up with a common goal. And these are some good slides here. This is a good one here. It talks about how do you go from, and I'll make an analogy. This is rushing out to do something without a plan, just keep it operationally going as normal. This is changing to strategic planning. Planning is something we really have to do. Let's go to the next slide. There's three ways to, three keys to the NAP process standard. Community-driven, focused on local grant, public planning systems. Here's another one. It's kind of a ladder. Citizen involvement. Here's some of the information we got from this site here. It's a national, local public health. So we pull some stuff from this site. We'll go to the next document. I'm going to try to make this big. So what I want to do is I want to close this, and I want to go to this folder that says land grant share. Let's open it up, and I want you to scroll down all the folders I have. Just go down, scroll down. Just scroll down and just show the folder content. We have a ton of folders here, different content, stuff we worked on. So we have a wealth and a ton of information. We have lawsuits. We have the conference with Frank. We have a lot of land patents. So you'll need to get there eventually. You'll need to do your own research, but we've done a lot of it. My point here is we have a lot we're willing to share. And so with that, I'll close and I'll finish with jurisdiction, control, ownership, and governance are all mutually exclusive. If you're lucky, some land grants still have all of them, but I think the governance part is that you have the right to control who's on your grant, who's within it, and what happens within it. We need to create that governmental structure similar to counties and cities, and we need to take our control of our land grants back, but in a legal, municipal corporate form, similar to what a county is. We need to challenge that they don't have what they call sole authority. We have mutual authority. Most jurisdictions have mutual authority, and they have to respect the organizations that are in place. And so with that, I'll close. If there's any questions, I'll take one or two questions. Our next speaker's coming up. We have David Benavides here, a great person in advocating for acequias and land grant rights. And I'll take a couple of questions if anybody has any. If not, we'll go on to our next speaker. Question?
How much is it to become a member or to get the?
We haven't formulated the official structure. I'm going to advocate that we look at that as the next structure. We put a board in place of each of the different chapters, and the chapter rules the association. The chapters that are paid chapter members, or maybe not even paid chapter members, maybe the membership